Trauma doesn't know time. When they say time heals all wounds, no, it doesn't. That's why a lot of my formulas that heal shock and trauma, there's remedies that have a relationship to the past, because everyone who's in shock is living in the past.
Hello, and thank you for calling the Higher Self Hotline, your direct line to the divine. You've been led here by your inner knowing, and you've arrived right on cue. I'm your host, Zoe Greco, and together we'll make the ethereal earthly, helping you consciously embody your spiritual knowing and most authentic self. Please listen carefully to the following options. To discover how to fulfill your soul's purpose, press 1. To unlock infinite abundance in life, love, and career, press 2. To heal your mind, body, and spirit, press 3. To speak with your personal spirit guides, press 0. Please hold while we connect you to your highest timeline. Hi friends, just dropping in to let you know that my November and December calendars for client sessions are now open. If you've been feeling the call to shift into deeper alignment, authenticity, abundance, and activation, this isn't just your sign, but an invitation from my higher self to yours. As my personal token of gratitude for your loyal listenership, I'm sharing a secret code created only for my podcast community, because you are my true soul family and the people that I am genuinely born to serve. There's something special between us, a resonance that you can already feel if you find yourself coming back week after week, and I want to acknowledge and honor that connection, and I'm hoping that you'll use this code as your permission slip to invest in yourself and this experience. Head over to zoegreco.com to book your session and enter Higher Self at checkout to save 10%. I would be deeply honored to walk with you, and I can't wait to see you in session. Hello, divine darlings, and welcome back to the Higher Self Hotline. I'm your host, Zoe Greco. Thank you so much for joining me today. And today I have quite a guest to share with you. If you don't already know of this incredibly inspiring and quite prolific steward of earth and medicine, it would utterly shock me. This is someone whose work I have long known of and admired, and am so honored to be able to share with you today. Today we are joined by none other than the one and only Alexis Smart. Alexis is a flower remedy practitioner and a classical homeopath. She's developed a line of flower remedies based on her years of working one-on-one with clients, and they treat universal conditions like heartbreak, low self-esteem, life purpose, ADD, beauty, skin, and everything in the human condition. She's been a Bach flower remedy practitioner for 20 years, working with mentors in direct lineage of Dr. Bach, and is currently expanding her postgraduate classical homeopath studies in Greece under the tutelage of world-renowned experts. Alexis, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
It's an honor for me, I must say. And, I would love if we could actually begin at the beginning of your story. What has brought you to this place? How did you land into this work and discover your passion for working with flowers and homeopathy?
Well, as most healers that I know who've stuck with it, the story of the wounded healer. I discovered these remedies because I needed them myself. I was really suffering, and nothing was working for years until I was given a flower remedy, and it just changed my life within 3 weeks. So that's the short version. But, I grew up with a herbalist mom who never really, she didn't give us medicine. She always made herb teas for us and kind of imparted this knowledge that your body can heal itself. So I didn't have to undo a lot of learning that some of my colleagues and peers have had to do, where, you have to learn a whole new philosophy about healing before you can even accept something as strangely vibrational as flower remedies. So I was kind of primed for working with plants and flowers. And then in my 20s, I went to Egypt. I've told this story so many times, but some of you may not have heard it. So I
certainly haven't.
Okay. So in my late 20s, I'd always been obsessed with Egypt since I was like a very small child. And in my late 20s, I had a chance to go there. And I went to this place called Siwa Oasis, very far out into the Libyan desert. And I contracted an illness soon after leaving there. And when I got home, and I had this high fever and shaking chills, and, because I hadn't researched it very well, I didn't know that what illnesses were there. I thought it was a flu. And then I came back to the States, and it continued. So every few months I'd have this insane fever. And I just felt terrible, and I lost all this weight. And then concurrently, I lost one of my closest loves to cancer. And so it was kind of like my body was taking a hit. My spirit was just shattered. And, I could not pull myself out of this dark place. And so that's when I went on this journey to see healers and doctors. And I saw every imaginable kind of healer. And, I'd go to acupuncture and do herbs for months and months with no results. And then craniosacral and Rolfing, and because I had all this body pain. And what else did I do? I went to shamans. I went to naturopaths, medical doctors. I did get tested for parasites but I was with the Screen Actors Guild. I was an actor at the time, commercial actress, and nobody asked me if I'd traveled to a foreign country, which is insane. And they did the kind of normal tests, and they said, you don't have parasites, though I had drank from a tap. And I don't know what I was thinking, that I drank from a tap in this oasis. I mean, and I bathed in a still pool. They had these springs there. I just did everything you're warned not to do. And I was losing a lot of weight. I was emaciated. I had cystic acne. So on top of just feeling so unhappy, I was starting to look terrible. And because of this, stopped getting work in commercials, which was my livelihood. So just every part of my life was difficult. And I started getting kind of mild panic attacks when I was driving to auditions. I could function through them, but I'd be sweating and feel really out of my body. And of course, by the time I got to the audition, I was a nervous wreck. And then you're supposed to be smiley and say cheese and, sell Pepsi or whatever. And I couldn't do it. And one day I'd taken my mom to the doctor, and I was killing some time, and I went to get a juice at the Beverly Hills Juice Club where I used to go in LA. And I passed this place I'd been past many times called the Healing Waters. And for some reason, I always passed it. I thought it was a spa. And then one day I looked in the window and it said English flower remedies. And I decided to go in, and I was like, just let it in there. And I told the woman there, hey, do you have anything for panic attacks? And she said, yeah, come back in 10 minutes. And she gave me this bottle of like a little, tincture bottle, and said, take this 4 times a day. In 3 days, you're going to feel a whole lot better. And in 3 weeks, you're going to be a new person. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be a new person. And I believed her. I just believed her, even though I had become really cynical and I didn't believe anyone anymore. I believed her. So I took this remedy, and it was exactly as she said. And then in 3 weeks, I was like back. I wasn't a new person. I felt back to my old self. I'd returned to myself, who was, by nature, I'm pretty happy and light and fun, but I'd become so heavy. And so I took this remedy, and my panic attacks went away. And then what came with this was total clarity that I should not act anymore. And that's why I was panicking, is I was forcing myself to do something that was so antithetical to my soul that I'd been lying to myself, because the money was really good. And my body was saying, stop doing this. Don't. And so I had total clarity, and I couldn't ignore it. And I also knew that my agent was gaslighting me and was like a really hostile, aggressive, abusive guy. Which I had ignored for so long, because I thought, why would he be abusive to me? I make money for him. Or no, he's not trying to destroy my self-esteem. That's crazy. But he was. And I finally talked to other women who said, yeah, I had the same experience. So And I had a similar boyfriend who was same vibration. And so I took this remedy 3 weeks later. I left my agent. I broke up with my boyfriend and I decided to quit acting. And I knew even just from this first bottle that somehow this medicine, this plant medicine would figure into my future and my career, more than my career, my life path, my purpose in life, which I'd never felt. I had inklings of what my purpose was, but I was not finding the exact kind of vehicle to express that. So that's how it all started.
First of all, there are so many pieces of your story that I relate to. First, I was raised religiously in a spiritual home. And so I also did not have things to unlearn, as you described. So I always find that such an interesting story because I think as, professionals or thought leaders, we're kind of supposed to have a story of triumph of like, I overcame all this flawed thinking and somehow that makes it more valid. And I think the idea that you can be nurtured by something and then give that to others is actually equally, if not more so, profound. So I loved that we have that kind of commonality in that. I also suffered with parasite. I got a parasite in India a couple of years ago, and boy, oh boy, was that terrible. And I haven't really spoken about it a ton on the show because it was just a little too dark, I think, for me to bring up, but it had brought me toward the edge of suicide. Like truly, like I started to lack, I couldn't see colors. Like it was so dark. And I realized like, oh, that's what parasites do. They cause you to want to end your life so they can, like, they want you to be eaten by a bigger host so that they have a better host. And unfortunately, I'm at the top of the food chain. There was nothing else to take me. So I relate so deeply to the density of dealing with parasites and dealing with just a body that is working against you. But I think your story is extremely compelling because I work with people day in and day out who have this inner knowing that something is misaligned, something isn't working, and they really struggle to find the courage to pursue what is truth to them, like their deeper truth. And for you to say, I took this remedy and within 3 weeks, I ended 2 toxic relationships and separated myself from a toxic career. It's like, it speaks to the power of the flower, truly. Like it speaks to the medicine of earth and how potently it can shift our vibration. Because what I really heard you talking about was your vibrational experience. You were in a low vibrational state physically, a low vibrational state emotionally, and in a low vibrational environment energetically.
Yes.
So to be able to receive that medicine that empowered you to change your entire life, to make such life-altering changes that most people take years to warm themselves to, I think really speaks to the potency and the power of this medicine. And so I'm actually very curious. I think your work and my work are similarly underestimated and misunderstood because they're subtle and they're invisible. So I'm curious if you could talk about the common misconceptions that you've had to overcome as a practitioner of plant medicine and working with flowers and homeopathy, especially, because I find that those are equally underestimated and overlooked. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, misconceptions would be, for example, like if I say I'm a homeopath, people say, oh, my cousin does that. She's a naturopath. And so they hear path and natural. And the whole philosophy behind flower remedies and homeopathy is different than really any other healing modality because it gives top priority to the spirit and the emotional state. And so when people say, do you have a remedy for candida or headaches or, no, we have a remedy for Zoe, or we have a remedy that is specifically for you, but the headache is kind of the least important part of how we would choose your remedy. So the founder of homeopathy, Samuel Hahnemann, believed that physical illness comes from an imbalance in the spirit. Usually there's a trauma or an emotional wound that happens first, then it manifests in the body. And so because illness is of the spirit and small. The medicine should be equally spiritual, and not spiritual meaning God into God, but spirit meaning tiny. So homeopathy is very dilute to the point where there's no substance in it. And, people who can't wrap their heads around that because it can't be scientifically proven are just, well, they're the ones losing out, because back to my Egypt story, turns out I likely had malaria, undiagnosed. But I finally saw a homeopath who had worked in India and Africa a lot with Homeopaths Without Borders. Just like they have Médecins Sans Frontières, they have Homeopaths Without Borders who go to places where they have, cholera outbreaks and typhus and malaria, and homeopathy treats malaria. And so after 5 years of suffering with these fevers, I saw a homeopath, and he gave me one dose of a remedy, and I never had a fever again. And it was a miracle. What's my point? Was that, had I been ruled by skepticism and like, how could it work? It's so small and an amount of something that, I'd be really sick now. So a misconception is that it's like that homeopathy is just like all other natural medicine. So there's so much in that it will change your life, and it change your emotions and relationships, and in a way that it teaches you that kind of you being happy and pursuing your soul's purpose is what keeps you healthy physically. And when you go off that path, you will usually get physical symptoms and illness. And flower remedies have the same philosophy, because Dr. Bach, who discovered those remedies, the flower remedies, he was a homeopath first. So he was very much in alignment with Samuel Hahnemann's outlook on illness. The difference is that the flowers are only for spiritual and emotional, whereas homeopathy treats physical illness as well.
That distinction was not something I was familiar with. And I'm someone that has used flower remedies in my life as well as homeopathy. So that distinction is actually really informative. And, you're saying something so important. And to be frank, I could probably have a very long discussion about being anti-big pharma. I'm the last person to take anything. And I think what you're saying is so important, because I personally am of the belief that we live in a society where we are prescribed things that keep us ill so that we can feed this machine, this system. And we're often given things that are so grossly over-medicated, overwhelming to our body and our system, when in reality, what we often need is so incredibly subtle. I don't think you need, a battering ram to move energy. It doesn't make sense to me. So what you're describing feels so important, especially to someone like myself, who is a self-identifying, highly sensitive, empathetic individual. And I primarily serve other highly sensitive people, empathetic individuals, intuitive, spiritually gifted individuals. And so I'm curious if there's a difference between the way that highly sensitive people respond to plant medicines like flower essences, homeopathy, versus someone who maybe doesn't identify that way.
Well, I'd say for flower remedies, highly sensitive people, I found they respond much more quickly and much more strongly to flower remedies. It's kind of like finally your sensitive nature works for your benefit in that way. Hyposensitive, as we call them, people, they will respond to flower remedies. It's more like they tend to not be aware of the effects. Like their family might notice, wow, he's way less angry, or he's more patient, but he would say, I don't know, I feel the same, right? And those people are generally more resilient and strong physically. And with homeopathy, no, you can be less sensitive and feel the remedies, but usually with a hyposensitive patient in homeopathy, you have to give maybe stronger potencies, or, they'll be less sensitive to the remedy. So you have to adjust the potencies and dosage for them. And there's certain remedies that are known to be for a hyposensitive patient. So like a sulfur type of person, sulfur is like, I mean, just in a nutshell, like strong ego, bushy hair, very messy, theorizing kind of philosophers. Like we know so many sulfurs, usually men. They don't notice things as much. And so there's remedies that are more for hyposensitive types, whereas a phosphorus patient who's sensitive and psychic and absorbs others' energies, they'll need a very small dose usually, and not as frequent, because they could just hold the bottle and think, ooh, this is the right remedy. Yeah.
My mother is constitutionally a redhead, like a true ginger, freckle-faced, like just precious as a peach. We call her Peaches. And my entire life, redheads, as I'm sure you're familiar, are hypersensitive to all things. Like they need more levels of anesthesia when they're under. Like they're just different.
They need more
constitutionally.
or less?
They need more. They awaken more easily.
Wow.
Like they're too strong for anesthesia.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
So I always, when I take her for appointments, I have to say because she has white hair now. So I'm like, guys, listen, she is a redhead. Constitutionally, she's a ginger. Like you need to give her a certain amount. And being, a caretaker at times to a cancer patient, my mother, who is constitutionally sensitive, myself being a sensitive person, we're in the medical world or the medical system. It's often the word I'm really looking for is denied. Like when you go into an office and say, I'm having this experience or I'm having this experience, we're often not believed because a normal person doesn't have that response or that reaction to that medicine. And this conversation is just reawakening me. This whole time I've been like, ooh, I should get in touch with Alexis about this. Like, oh, I should hop in and get an appointment. So I'm actually really curious what your personal process is like when you are in the creation phase, because there's so much that I'm excited to continue to talk about, that you're in the works of creating. But, you said something really important, which was, we don't just have this, we have a remedy for Zoe. But I know that you also create remedies for specific conditions that are emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. So I'm curious sort of what that process looks like. And is it something that is, created through channeling? Is it something that is part channeling, part obviously theory? I'm sure there's certain flowers that do certain things. Like I can only assume such. So I'm curious what that creative process looks like for you.
Well, it's so ingrained in me that it's second nature. It's like if you learned to drive a stick shift and then you had to tell someone, well, you put your foot on the clutch. So it's second nature. But if I had to break it down, like you, I worked one-on-one with people for years, creating custom remedies for them. So we talk in a therapeutic setting, sometimes for an hour and a half, and I'd get their whole life story, and like their story was what led up to where they are now and where they need help. But in the system, Dr. Bach's system, he found 38 flowers that treat different human emotions. But of those 38, 12 are called type remedies, soul type remedies. And so those were the first remedies he found. And he originally was just going to treat people with these 12 remedies. He observed people and deduced that there are 12 personality types or soul types, and that we all have a certain lesson to learn. So, for example, the centauri, who is very kind and gentle and feels it's just their purpose in life to serve others and help others. It's a beautiful quality, but when out of balance, that person will martyr themselves to the point where the weakness of will, not saying no, that will show up in the body as weakness, or anemia, or some kind of, also those people tend to be prone to parasites because they let people live off them. And they can be very exhausted, and they just have no will. So there, and or for example, vervain is kind of the opposite. That's a very willful person, very passionate and enthusiastic, and they want to get everyone else excited about what they want to do. They'd be good like directors and producers and business people or anything, teachers. But they're fighters for a cause, and when that's negative, they will fight a thing to death, even if even if they're wrong, they can't let this go, this will. So they need to, and they tend to overdo it when they're sick. So there's, within the system, there are these 12 kind of pillars of like life direction and archetypes. And those people tend to go. I noticed over these years working with them that they would tend to have certain things happen in their lives more than one other type. So when I went on to create these remedies for certain universal conditions, not only were they for conditions, but I would notice, like if you look at Ganesh, I have, which is for manifesting, and it's for creativity and self-sabotage, and vervain is not in there because a vervain person usually doesn't have this problem of, I'm my worst enemy, I won't do anything, I'm just sitting around dreaming. They're the opposite. So knowing that, it's unlikely a vervain person would have this condition. It's filled with more yin type of personality remedies. Someone who, like Clematis, who's dreamy and drowsy and only thinks about doing stuff but doesn't put it into action. So in my formulas, there's usually a type remedy or a few, as well as kind of remedies that help you adapt to certain situations, like Wholehearted for heartbreak. That is kind of a universal condition. Like no matter your type remedy, when you are heartbroken, you will default to this pattern. So in that one, it's not as important, the type remedy, because that's a real condition. So sorry, I kind of go off on these tangents and then I totally forgot what I was talking about. So
you are entirely on topic. And I have to just say, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, do you identify as psychic or intuitive?
Yeah.
You must, right?
I do.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is that we should talk also. Like I keep thinking, I should talk to you because I think I'm highly psychic and I don't acknowledge the value of it. And I go, that was weird when I dreamed that. I had so many premonitions and psychic dreams, and I sometimes discount it, or because no one else in my life talks about it, maybe a few people. I think I give it less weight than I should. Like I really need to own it more. You know what I mean?
Lean in, yeah. Because as you were talking, I was like, you're talking about me. And then I was like, you're talking about something. Like, I feel like you were picking up your examples that you were sharing from my field.
Oh, yeah. Because why did I pick those formulas, right?
Yes, exactly. And just, I was like, I'm getting a little called out right now. Like this feels personal.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So as I was listening to you, I just thought, like your intuitive power is, I have chills as I'm talking about it.
I was going to just ask you if you had chills. That's so funny.
Because
I
we're
don't have
connected.
chills.
I love that. Yeah, I'm feeling it. I feel it so strongly. And I have to imagine that was kind of why I asked, like, do you experience this as a channeled experience? Because yes, obviously there's formula, there's some sort of, foundational pieces that have been created that you study. I mean, you're a student. I mean, even to this day, you're expanding your knowledge, spending time in Greece, like studying under these renowned specialists. Like clearly you're an academic to a degree. And also because this medicine is so spiritual in nature and is so connected to nature, which is the most profound spirit we engage with, to me, it just feels obvious. And so the fact that you said, well, it's kind of second nature to me, that was when I said, absolutely. Like this is a channeled psychic thing, because often when I'm in session and I'm talking to someone, like even when I listen back to podcast episodes, I'm like, wow, I said that. That's good. But I also can hear what I would have said. I know what I say because I would have said it again. So there's some sort of like channeled experience there.
Yes.
So I thought for sure that must be from a channeled space.
I think so. And like, so, when I first started practicing, I'd read a lot and I had this idea of, what a vervain person would look and sound like, or what a clematis person would look and sound like. And at the beginning, when I prescribed for people, I would go by that, and through trial and error and people coming back saying, it didn't work. And then I would do the intuitive thing, like, well, what is their energy? Doesn't feel like a vervain. Their energy feels like they're saying all these words like, "Oh, I'm a vervain. I work too hard and I do push too hard." But then I'd go, "Are they a chicory? Someone who pushes too hard in relationships and tries to control people emotionally, like they might perceive themselves as having these vervain qualities, but really it's a deeper, more of an emotional overpowering of somebody and so then I would start prescribing more intuitively just by, okay, this person feels like that remedy. And then I had much better results that way.
What a beautiful process. And I'm curious because you shared that you used to do one-on-one sessions with individuals.
Yeah.
I know your brand. I mean, truly, I mean this with my whole heart. I've been in this industry for a decade and I've known of you since day one. I mean, you are a well-known, truly prolific person in the spiritual and healing community. I think anyone would say that to you. And if they don't say it, I'm sorry, they should. I feel like you should be hearing this every day. And I'm curious, without that one-on-one touch, how people are able to best, I don't want to say self-diagnose, but how do they understand which remedies are for them? Because you have quite the options. So how does someone that like comes upon, Alexis Smart, how do they know which remedy to pursue? Is there like a prompting process they move through?
Well, I do have a quiz and I'm very proud
That's
of it.
what I was hoping you'd say.
And I created it because it's many of the questions I would ask in a consultation, and it's not computer generated. So I had that option and I said, no way, because it can't perceive nuance. And so I answer these, or my assistant Gretchen does. She's really great. I check her work and I'm like, that's what I would have given them. So, and she's really cares about our customers so much. So you can just, if you want to just not even look through the website and read a bunch of info, you can just do the quiz. Or I have so much information on the website about healing yourself. And that was Dr. Bach's book, and philosophy was Heal Thyself, that you're your best doctor. You don't need to go to somebody else. And so what I tell people, because we will relate to all of the formulas, I look through my website and I'm like, oh, that's me, or that's me. But the best thing to do is because we heal in layers, usually the best way to do it is to take the outer layer, which is the most present, most recent condition you have. What are you feeling right now? And then you take a remedy for that condition until that condition will go. And usually what happens is something else comes forward. So you might be that Ganesh type, and you're dreamy and you can't manifest anything, and suddenly you're like real active, and you get all this stuff done, and you get a photo show up, and you're writing a novel, and you started a business, and then 2 months later you're like, okay, that's covered, but I'm so angry and irritable and I can't relax. And so you know that you've treated a layer, and a deeper layer has come forward to asking to be healed. Then you reassess your condition, and then you choose, it's all good, which is for being like irritable and intolerant and impatient. And and also because there are so many formulas, there's a good thing like at the top, it'll say condition, so you can choose. I think we all know how we feel, like, when you see the word grief, or you see the word depression or anxiety, you kind of like when you're hungry and you look at a menu, I'll have the borscht. you know what you need or what you want.
Wow. First of all, I want to just say, I think that this is why your work is so potent and your remedies are so effective, because I didn't actually know that there's still such a level of high touch. Even once you take this quiz, there's still this personal review of that, which just speaks to the integrity with which you approach this work. Because from the outside, I don't know what your experience is like as an entrepreneur. And I think that's always like, I don't think that people would know my journey as an entrepreneur. Like, the journey itself is quite nuanced, winding, confusing, exciting, thrilling, devastating, all sorts of things. But from the outside, looking at you, it would be like, oh, she's so prolific at this point, so, expanded. There's no way that you could possibly have the time to review these quizzes yourself, but the fact that you take the time, that you make the time, that you prioritize it, that just speaks to the integrity that the medicine is delivered with. So that was the first thing I have to say, is that that feels in itself extremely healing. The second thing that I would love to comment on is you talked about something profoundly and imperatively important, which is that healing occurs in layers. And it sounds like to me that the remedies are almost like, okay, I think about healing like an onion, like you get to that very tight core where you go, oh, okay, now we're here. Now we're really at the center.
Yes.
But it happens in these layers and these experiences where you remove one layer of unconsciousness or trauma or pain, and it reveals, you have this moment of like, whew, glad that's through.
Yeah,
and then you become quite aware of what was sitting underneath it. And to acknowledge that healing occurs non-linearly, but in these layers of unfolding and opening, is so incredibly important. And also to acknowledge as well that with each layer comes this new awareness, like this new level of self that needs to be treated perhaps entirely differently than the version that existed before. And I think the thing about flower remedies particularly is like, and with subtle medicine, is that it is so soft that perhaps anyone can feel safe. And that safety makes it easy, perhaps, or easier to allow ourselves to unfurl and delayer. So what you're talking about feels extremely important. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, how do I start pointing people in your direction? Like, how do I start? Because I can think of every single one of my clients, my mentees, like the people that I teach and I guide, they would be so blessed to experience this medicine. So I'm going to email you and talk to you about this.
Yes.
Because I would love to create some sort of pipeline. But we talked before we officially hit record privately about some of the big projects that you have coming up and coming forward. And you shared that you are in partnership with Lacey Phillips, who is amazing, to be expanded. I mean, to be magnetic, expanded podcast. She's just so amazing. I have a lot of people in my orbit that work closely with her. I'm waiting for the day that she and I connect directly, but she's just, one of the greats as well in the field. And so you shared that you're working on something with her as well as another product that I'd love to talk about next. But I would love to hear first about what you're co-creating with Lacey.
Yeah, well, we already have two formulas. We have expanded and unblocked. And unblocked was first and then expanded. And we're doing magnetic next, which is kind of like the third. And I love a trilogy. I just love threes. And so it's the kind of final one in the trilogy of after you've done these levels of work through her program, it's like polishing the diamond, I call it, like you're kind of ready to just be magnetic and you've already cleared a lot of old stuff away. So yeah, it's been taking a while to get that one out, but I think it's coming out this February. And her work and my work are very compatible. Like we've known each other for years as friends. And when we finally traded sessions, 10 years ago, I can't remember exactly, the way I was talking about remedies and the way she was talking about manifestation, I was like, this is exactly the same kind of philosophy, like getting close to who you truly are, removing guilt and feeling worthy and like living your authentic self. It was so compatible. So I feel very good and we're very aligned on so many things. So I'm working on that. That'll be out February. And then I'm working on another formula. I just did a trial. So my trial used to be my clients when I worked one-on-one, but now that I'm not doing that, I, send out an email blast or do a newsletter and collect guinea pigs. And I just did one for cancer patients. And so the remedy's not for cancer, but it's for the spiritual and emotional wound that is getting a cancer diagnosis. So I have one called I Will that I've had for years that is more for maybe you've been ill for longer and you feel tired and you've given up and you're hopeless. And so it gives you strength. But this one is more, I realized, that because I have so many friends that have been going through this, and more than ever, for some reason in the world, there's like a lot of cancer in the last 2 to 3 years. This is for the period where you've just gotten a diagnosis, and there's this thing that happens. It's a shock, and because we're raised with, I mean, the cancer is the worst word you can hear. I mean, even the word conjures. I feel that anyone who's remotely superstitious, if they hear that word, it's almost like a spell's been cast and they can't undo it. It's so powerful, and so the person who's just gotten that diagnosis, they go through the trauma of hearing that word, which can be such a blow to their vital force that, you know, often they can just get sick immediately upon hearing that. It has an effect on your whole immune system. And then there's the whole question of what you're going to do. And you've got everyone telling you, oh, you better we don't want to wait till it's too late. You know, you got to do this now. And it's just all fear, all fear. And then how are you supposed to make a decision about your treatment that is life and death when people have a gun to your head? Because that's the energy of these. Making a decision from that place is not good. So I thought, okay, I thought of all of the things that someone might need going through this, and the obsessive worry that keeps you up at night, the loneliness of the, you know, just and being influenced and the biggest thing is losing your connection to your intuition, because everything else kind of overrides that. It's the fear just quiets that intuition. And your cancer journey or how you treat it is going to be different than how one person might go to Gerson Institute and do the coffee enemas and the juice. And one person might say, look, I did the surgery and I'm fine. And, some people are more very practical about cancer, and some are more sensitive to those treatments and should not do them. But when they can't hear their intuition, then they're in a dangerous place. So I felt that was really needed, and I sent it out to a bunch of people who had just had the diagnosis. It's imperative that they had it more recently, like in the last month to 9 months or so. And I got really great reports back. And I also tried to have remedies in there for like the type remedies for the type of people who do get cancer. And a lot of it is guilt and lack of self-love. And so I wanted that to be in there. And suppression. So in homeopathy, we have a thing called miasms. And those are kind of disease states that if there's blocks in your case and you're not responding to remedies, Hahnemann said, there could be a miasm, this underlying kind of almost blockage that needs to be cleared, that is of disease nature. It doesn't mean you have the disease, but there's like the tubercular miasm and the syphilis miasm. Well, there's the cancer miasm, and people that fit into that category, they all share certain things, which is usually perfectionism, suppression of emotion, self-denial, martyrdom, giving, guilt, and but usually like denial of the self. And they, people who talk about this spiritually would say you get cancer to say I'm what do I have to do to put myself first? I guess this would warrant some, quote, selfishness. Start living my life differently and give to myself first. And, I don't want anyone to have to get cancer to learn that lesson. But if it happens to you, this remedy will help you kind of gently guide you to that knowing and to that. Yeah.
It's bringing up emotion for me to hear you talk about this. And it's interesting. So I shared with you that about 12 years ago, maybe 13 or 14 years ago now, because you started treatment quite early, My mother was diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer, and she was given about 6 months to live. And she actually overcame that diagnosis. But when she did, they said, okay, just so you know, this disease is recurrent. 75% of people that experience this disease will experience the disease again. And of that 75%, 90% will eventually die from this disease. And at the time I was in college when this diagnosis occurred, and I was actually not communicating with my father at the time. We were estranged, and which we're no longer, thank goodness. And I remember the shock that you're talking about that a person receives. Oh, I'm going to cry. You feel it as someone who loves them too. But also, you know, the cancer did recur. So she ended up having recurrent ovarian cancer. And at that point they said, you will perish from this disease. You have about 6 months to live. And she moved to Arizona to be with me. In her last month, she made arrangements to be turned into a diamond that I could wear. She's very glamorous. So she had arrangements to be turned into a diamond. She packed up all of our, the things from my childhood home, put them in storage, organized them in a binder so that I would know how to sell them, what to do. I mean, she really went through every detail to make sure that that burden did not fall on me. And, 6 months came around and she was no evidence of disease, but doctors said, don't get excited. Just because, we're seeing this doesn't mean that this is going to be the way it is. And so every 3 months for years and years and years and years, she had to go in with this nerve-wracking, knee-knocking fear that cancer would still be there. And so it took us years. My husband and I, at the time we were just dating, it took us years to convince her to buy a car or buy a home or move forward with her life in any way, because she just thought that it would eventually become a burden to us. And she didn't want to live her life in a way that it would eventually create some sort of headache, quote unquote, for me in the future. And it took us quite some time, like I said, to say, hey, you're allowed to be alive. We're happy you're alive. We know how to sell a car. We know how to sell a house. We know how to, we can do this. Like, you don't have to stop living your life just because you think it's a burden to us. Right. So she actually went through this extremely profound survivor's guilt while also being medically prescribed unreasonable amounts of pain medication, because they said, you're going to die eventually. Just keep, and if you're in pain, you're in pain. So as I'm listening to this, I'm hearing what you're saying. I actually believe, after my own experience, that that perhaps that shock, that wave of shock, it creates this crack like that is persistent. And so even, 15 years post-diagnosis, 10 years NED, no evidence of disease, I still think this remedy would be profoundly powerful and healing to her.
I think so.
And perhaps even to myself as someone that is, a caregiver and a loved one and an only child, as a very young person, believing that I was about to be left alone in this world, like the shock that overcomes you when you hear that word, it is extremely earth-shattering and rocking. And so I'm not here to tell you what your medicine does, but I am curious, as I've shared this with you, how does that resonate for you to receive and to hear?
What you just told me?
Like, do you agree that it could be effective for people even beyond their initial diagnosis?
Yes, because trauma doesn't know time. So, when they say time heals all wounds, no, it doesn't. That's why a lot of my formulas that heal shock and trauma, there's remedies that have a relationship to the past, because everyone who's in shock is living in the past. They're not quite here. They're not back there. They're kind of like time traveling all the time. And shock is a strange thing because nobody knows they're in shock. The part of shock is that it disables your ability to recognize your condition, and it is a survival thing. But it's like playing dead or possum, or that there's a kind of freezing of the vital force. And I think we do that so that we won't try to live our lives fully until that shock is healed because we're too vulnerable. But then there's a point where, okay, you can live your life now, but you're still stuck in a way, frozen. And so if you've had a shock that severe and it was maintained because every time she had to go in for testing, it's like waiting for the results to come, and then she would never feel like she was probably always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I think she still is, to be honest with you. I don't think that really,
no.
I don't see that it's going away. And I want to just express what's coming through me in this moment and just say, this particular type of wound is so unacknowledged.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what a service I really believe it is that you've created this. In addition to the many wonderful, amazing things that you've created, this particularly resonates deeply for me. As I'm thinking about the people that I love and what a gift this can be to them, I think it is just so incredibly important. And I think when someone is a pioneer, truly, I mean this with my whole heart, when someone is truly a pioneer of healing, we don't always see it in the moment. And as it's happening in the moment, often, like with the Gerson, like all these things that you were talking about too, because I'm familiar with that as well, there's a kind of this denial, especially when it is alternative or experimental or unseen or subtle. And I really want to go out and say, then I don't think this would be a shock to anyone, I really believe you are a pioneer. I really believe you are doing and creating things, taking wisdom that, has existed from people like Dr. Bach, but transforming it into something that is needed today. And so I really just cannot express enough gratitude and admiration for the ways that you take steps forward for all of us and respond intuitively to what you're experiencing, because your experience attracts exactly what the universe needs you to experience in order to be a channel on behalf of everyone. So I think that is really profound, that you're responding to that with so much attentiveness and so much love. I really feel that in what you're doing.
Thank you for saying that. It's, I have thought that too. Thank you so much. But, it's funny because I have suffered a lot. And not as much as some, and more than others, but
there's no comparison.
Yeah. All of these things that have happened. Even getting malaria, and, I did change my whole course in life because of that. And I thought maybe that's what I needed to get me off this track I was on, and teach me compassion, because I don't think I had not had physical illness before that. And people who had chronic pain, or I thought they were being self-pitying or, indulgent. And it taught me about suffering. And so, all of these things that happen to us, I think, I like the way that you framed that, because I do channel all of the things that have happened to me into remedies, really. And which is interesting, because Dr. Bach, this is something he used. It was called, he called it sympathetic resonance. He had cancer. He was given 6 months to live. He was a medical doctor. He had an office on Harley Street, which is like the fancy part of London where all the top doctors are. And he was given a cancer diagnosis. And he said, I'm going to change my life. I need to do my life's work. And he sold his practice. And he went out to find these remedies. And he lived, I never remember how much longer he lived, but it was many years when he was given, not long. And but he was suffering because of this cancer. So he had pain and he had spiritual anguish, dark night of the soul. He went through everything a human could go through. And during these stages in his illness, he would go out and in nature, and he would find the remedy that was resonating with the state he was in. So it was like, just like an animal will know if they've eaten poison, what plant to eat to cure them. That was kind of how he found many of the remedies, was that he was in that state himself. And, or he, at other times he could put his hand over a flower and feel the person that was for. He was highly intuitive. So I think nothing's lost. on a healer or a writer. Everything goes into a positive. Yeah.
I resonate deeply with that. And I feel so grateful. Over the last decade, I've worked with literally thousands of people, and I myself have had my own traumas and suffering, some of which I've shared here, some of which I won't ever share here because it directly affects other people. But I also I'm let in so deeply into the hearts of those that I work with. I get to sit inside their energetic experience, which has expanded my sort of lexicon of empathetic, like my empathy can take 1,000 faces because of what I've been able to feel through the fields of others. And I think that kind of information is necessary to healers and intuitives, channels, what have you, because I like to also think that I deliver subtle energy medicine, like through the spoken word. Like it moves something to be seen or witnessed or reflected or acknowledged.
Yes.
Does that, it holds that resonance. And so as a collector myself of ways to be empathetic and understanding and compassionate, I resonate deeply with what you're sharing and what you're saying. And I know that we're at the end of our time together, which is crazy because I could talk to you forever. Yeah. I could just talk to you forever. But as we conclude, I would love if you could tell people about where they can connect with you and experience, where they can take the quiz, where they can purchase their own. Because I am positive by now people have been feverishly taking notes and going, okay, I heard this type. Like, so how can we experience your magic for ourselves?
Well, my website is alexissmart.com, my name. So it's 2 S's, Alexis smart.com. And then I'm on Instagram. That's where I answer a lot of questions. Gretchen does the quizzes mostly, and if she's stumped, I read them. So I don't want Gretchen to be listening to this. What are you talking about? I'm doing the quizzes.
No, Gretchen, we acknowledge your contribution. We honor, love, and extend deepest layers of gratitude to Gretchen. Gretchen is also a profound part of you and what you send into this world. So we're grateful to Gretchen.
Yes, thank you.
So alexissmart.com. And by the way, what a great last name for you.
Isn't it? I really lucked out with that one.
You sure did. And tell us about your Instagram. I heard that, but give us the...
So Instagram is Alexis Smart Flower Remedies. And, I try to post stuff that's useful, that's helps you to heal yourself and know yourself. That's the other thing Dr. Bach was really passionate about, was that, know thyself is necessary to heal thyself, because you can't know what you need unless you really know who you are or how you feel. And and then I try to answer all the DMs on there. And what else? Yeah, I think that's enough for everybody to find me.
Well, I truly cannot thank you enough for being here, for sharing your voice and your message and your medicine, your essence, your energy. It is so powerfully transmitted. I feel you in the room with me. And this whole time I've just thought, I wish I could just give you a hug. Like, I wish I could just... heart-to-heart hug. Also, I want to just say, for those that don't follow Alexis on Instagram, big mistake. You're an artist. Like, the way that you curate and like the way that you live and capture things is just so artistic. Like, your sense of aesthetics is extremely elevated, very sophisticated.
Oh, thank you.
And just like delicious. So
I love that.
There's so much to be consumed of you.
Thank you so much. I'm always on my, thinking, I should get someone to help me with that, or I don't know what I'm doing, but everything's intuitive. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
My absolute pleasure. Well, there you have it, blessed babes. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. And I would love if we could take a moment to send this week's subject, Alexis Smart, some love, sweetness, and positivity as she continues to forge paths forward into deeper levels of healing that we may be the most grateful recipients of, and may her path be illuminated in peace, in resonance, in wellness, in all layers and levels of abundance. And I am so grateful to have held the space for her today. If you are interested in being on the show, you know what to do by now, you guys. Send an email to podcast@zoegreco.com. Connect with me on all socials at @thezoegreco. And of course, I want to conclude by reminding you that you are important, you matter, and you are perfect exactly as you are. I love you. Your spirit guides love you. Alexis Smart loves you, and the universe loves you. So until next time, keep answering the call of your higher self. Bye, friends.